Bonjour tout le monde. I know you are all wondering about the absolute travesty that occurred in Ottawa this weekend. Thankfully, none of you actually witnessed any of it firsthand, as the legacy media you rely on exclusively to shape your reality were conspicuously absent from any of the goings-on. It was simply too dangerous for our brave journalists to have their boots on the ground to provide the unbiased coverage you're used to. Allow me to paint the picture for you. The hate that oozed out of the pores of those demonstrators was as thick as maple syrup and as bitter as my wife's tears when she wakes up next to me every morning instead of Idris Elba. These hooligans were not only waving Nazi flags, assaulting old ladies with horses, stealing food from starving Ethiopian children, but they also defaced a Terry Fox statue by hanging a sign on him promoting freedom, a word which is nothing more than a racist dog whistle promoting violence against Canadians. To make matters worse, they dishonor the memory of our veterans by placing flowers and Canadian flags over the war monument. Obedient consumers of government propaganda are well aware that both flowers and the Canadian flag have no place at a peaceful protest. They are symbols of hate, anti-Semitism, misogyny, and climate denial. Let me be clear. We will not be intimidated by real men and women of conviction who dare to stand up for their beliefs. We will not cave to persons of integrity and honor who make me feel small by organizing and assembling at my doorstep to call out my wild arrogance and obscene hypocrisy to my face.
Many of these protesters even held signs with a terrible expletive followed by my last name. Some of them even dared to dance in front of a large truck with these words written on the side. This is unacceptable and un-Canadian.
For the Ottawawians being held hostage in your city without the means to bravely escape as I did, I know your lives have been turned upside down. Your steady diet of CBC and the delightful Trevor Noah have rendered you incapable of venturing outdoors among crowds of unmasked heretics. Rather than take advantage of the economic windfall guaranteed by an influx of millions of people into the downtown core, you have wisely chosen to close your businesses out of fear of being raped, murdered, or lynched by these protesters. This means that many Ottawawians no longer have jobs to go to. Since this public gathering began, you can't even go to a nice restaurant to enjoy a sit-down meal, or have a pint in a neighborhood pub. You can no longer play sports, go to a gym, bring your children to a museum, or attend a concert. You are unable to travel, as you're too afraid to brave the crowds to go to the train station or airport. In other words, a handful of Karens and their beta male husbands in downtown Ottawa have been subjected to the same conditions as unvaccinated Canadians on a daily basis. This is completely unacceptable. But my government has a plan to end this and to restore Ottawa to its former glory. The fact is, our Canadian law enforcement and military, fully supported by the Emergencies Act, isn't enough to stop such a small fringe minority from overrunning our streets. Thankfully, our comrades in China have been kind enough to lend us military aid to help us deal with this threat so that vaccinated Ottawawians can get their way of life back. Throughout the week, several battalions of Chinese troops will be arriving in shifts at the airfield in North Bay. These brave Maoist warriors will train our police and military in some of their unique peacekeeping techniques that have allowed the basic dictatorship in China to stifle all dissent and break the spirit of its citizens. As these Chinese soldiers arrive in our military bases, Canadians can expect to see shortages in certain staples you're used to having access to, namely food. The fact of the matter is, most of these Chinese soldiers are genetically engineered specimens. These transhumanist cyborgs have an advanced metabolism, and as such they have a voracious appetite. As a result, much of our foodstuffs are being redirected towards military bases throughout Ontario where these Chinese troops are being amassed. It's nothing to fear, and it will only be a temporary strain until our troops are trained and deployed into Ottawa. Now, for those people protesting in Ottawa, I have a message for you. I understand that you're angry. I understand that you wanted to protest and to have your voices heard. Well, you have been heard loud and clear. And now listen to me. It is time to go home and time to get vaccinated. You have approximately 3 days to leave the city voluntarily before our troops arrive. For those still remaining on site refusing to leave, you will be captured and your organs will be harvested for those vaccinated Canadians who deserve them more than you do. My fellow Canadians, we're in a crisis, but we've been through tough times before and we'll get through this together. Because as Canadians, we've got each other's backs. From sea to shining sea. From coast to coast to coast. Unless you're unvaccinated. Merci tout le monde.